Okay, welcome to the last video presentation for this subject. Last kasi as promised, I condensed the topics and yung mga important parts lang yung kinuha ko. And also, I tried to make things simpler so that we can finish the subject earlier and also so that we can focus on other subjects, okay? Kasi currently, I don't know if you know, I am helping the fourth years with their thesis and also those who just recently graduated na hindi pa nila tapos ma-final edit yung mga thesis nila. Well, malaki talagang trabaho yon. So, ayokong ma, mahuli yung mga pag-comply nila sa kanilang mga subjects o sa kanilang mga requirements. So I am trying to make this subject earlier to be finished. Tama ba yun? Well, anyway, um, yung schedule ng final exams is January, third week of January. Then sa fourth week is yung enrollment and then sa first week ng February yung start of classes. So, I am going to give you your final exams in the either last week of December or the first week of January para makapag-focus naman tayo sa kung ano yung dapat nating focus. Because as to be expected, you will be having lots of compliances in other subjects. So para magaan-gaan, I hope this helps. Okay, so without further ado, let's start with the first topic. Sociology of law is one of the three principal divisions of criminology. So, ano ba yung tatlo? Yung isa, of course, criminal etiology. We already discussed about that. The study of the causes of crime. And then next is penology. We already took that already. So, we already took that already. Grabe redundancy, no? So, penology is the study of pain and punishment with the goal of either erasing or reducing the crime. So, next is sociology of law. Ito yung pangatlong principal division. It is an attempt at scientific analysis of the conditions under which criminal laws develop as a consequence of a behavior of mankind for the good and welfare of the state and of the maintenance of peace and order and tranquility among citizens and any person sojourning therein. So, eto yung pag-analyze kung paano nabubuo yung mga criminal laws. Of course, with the goal of um, maintaining peace and order for the welfare of the state and the people in the state, sojourning in the state. Okay? So, meron akong konting short true story. This really happened in MSU Marawi around 1960s or 1970s. A group of political science students wanted to study more or to know more about communism. So they decided to travel to China kasi during that time, yung China lang yung nag-practice ng communism. So, bumili sila ng one-way plane ticket. They flew there. Tapos they lived there for about, I think, 3 years ata. So, after 3 years, they decided to go home. Pero pinangbawalan sila. So what they did is they hijacked a plane pauwi ng Pilipinas. But during that time, wala pang law na nagsasabing bawal ang hijacking. Okay? Walang law na nakalagay na yung isa sa mga element is an airplane. Okay? Of course, if you're going to take a thing, dapat, then that's considered as, let's say, theft. If you took a thing by force, then that is robbery. So, hindi mo naman madadala or mahawakan yung ano. So, during that time, hindi pa krimen yung hijacking, pag-hijack ng airplane. So, they arrived in the Philippines, and then in order to avoid the abuse, yung palaging magkaroon ng hijack kasi hindi naman punishable. So what the government did is they made a law, they passed a bill, and then they approved it, and now is a law. Naging ano na, naging batas na. So, as you can see, isa din yan sa mga examples kung paano nabuo yung law. Of course, it is based, it is, ano, what we call this, ang ang iniisip is for the welfare of the people or the state. Okay? So, okay, later on. Moving on, the present penal code, which is the revised penal code, yung code natin, yung RPC, was enacted in December 1930. It is a mere retouching of the Spanish Penal Code of 1890, which in turn was based on the early Spanish Penal Code 1843. Kasi of course, we were colonized by the Spanish, kaya yung laws natin, may, din, may, may influence sa Spanish Penal Code. The main criterion of the present penal code is that the basis of criminal liability, yung tulubago ng isang tao, is human free will, and the purpose of penalty is retribution. So, kadalasan daw na mga provisions ng revised penal code, kung ano yung nasa loob ng revised penal code, is based on human free will. So, kapag nakakommit ka ng rape, so, talaga, may assumption na talaga sa law na you did it on your own free will. So, this idea was influenced by the classical theory in which the acts of people were already weight na natimbang na yung pain and pleasure, hedonism. I hope na you know about that, yung pain and pleasure sa classical theory. Then, yung mga acts ng tao is hindi siya napilitan. He did it in his own free will. Okay? Tapos yung purpose ng penalty ng penal code natin, revised penal code, is retribution or punishment dahil naka-violate ka ng law. To the classicists and especially the framers, yung gumawa ng Spanish Penal Code of 1879, man is essentially a moral creature with absolutely having a free will to choose between good and evil. So, see, yung isang tao daw, kapag naka-violate siya, before he violated the law, he had a choice. He had a choice either to do the crime or not. Okay? So, this was the Spanish Penal Code of 1879 was very highly influenced by the classical theory. Then later on, nag-evolve, na-influence din ng neoclassical theory, which is may consideration yung mga tao na gumawa ng crime kasi wala silang free will, tulad ng mga bata at saka yung mga baliw. So, may consideration na justification. So, The other one is yung sa positive or Italian. Later on, meron din namang mga, let's say, changes yung law natin kasi na-influence din ng uh, positive, positivist or Italian theory. Okay? Especially doon sa pag-handle sa bata. Okay? So, moving on. Theory of logomacy. Nullum crimen nulla pena sine lege. There is no crime when there is no law punishing it. So, what comes first, law or crime? Of course, law. Okay? Kasi kung wala pang law, tapos uh, people know what you are doing is wrong, you cannot call it he is committing a crime. You cannot call that act a crime. But you can call it immoral. But there is no punishment of immorality. It is in the eyes of God that you will be punished. Okay? Now, three branches of government. Legislative branch consists of a Senate and House of Representatives. It has power to create laws. Kasali din dito yung Congress. Executive branch composed of the office of President. The President has the power to create presidential decrees, during martial law, executive orders, proclamation number, and administrative order that have power and effect of laws. Judicial branch, power to check and balance the constitutionality of the laws created. So, dito, itong legislative branch ang may strong connection sa sociology of law. Kasi sila yung gumagawa ng mga laws. Sila yung, they're the ones who review the bills and kapag na-approve, it becomes a law. Okay? So, next is limitation on the power of the lawmaking body to enact penal legislation. So, the Bill of Rights of 1987 Constitution imposes the following limitations. So, sa Bill of Rights, ito yung right na mga rights of the accused. I think this is Article 3 of the 1987 Constitution of the Philippines. So, first limitation is no ex post facto law or bill of attainder shall be enacted. So, dapat walang batas na magagawa na ex post facto law. So, what is this ex post facto law? Makes an act done before the passage of the law and which was innocent when done and punishes such an act. So, katulad ng, let's say, sa hijacking. Diba during that time, itong sa short story ko, during that time, sa first hijacking incident, wala pang law na papanish sa kanila. So, if there is, so according sa 1987 Constitution, you cannot make a law na magpunish sa isang tao na gumawa ng isang krimen na hindi pa krimen during that time. Gumawa ng act. So, sa case ng mga group of political science students, no law shall be made or created that will punish them of the act of hijacking. So, yung law of hijacking will only take effect after it was approved. But during the time they did that act, they should not be punished. That is according to the 1987 Constitution. Okay? No person shall be held to answer for a criminal offense without due process of law. So, dapat meron talagang process of law ng kung paano talaga how the law should work or the flow of the law, yung process niya. So first, what is the most important? Okay, you will be held for trial. You will be heard. Your case will be heard. So pakikinggan ka. Okay, that is one of the due process of law. So balik tayo dito. No ex post facto law or bill of attainder shall be enacted. Okay, ex post facto law is done. Bill of attainder, dito sa baba, bill of attainder is a legislative act which inflicts punishment without trial, of course. Its essence is a substitution of a legislative act for a judicial determination of guilt. Easy to understand. You cannot inflict punishment without trial. Okay? So, um, according to the 1987 Constitution, the legislative branch cannot make a law na mag-punish sa isang tao na hindi pa dumaan sa trial. Okay? At hindi rin makagawa ng batas na yung ex post facto law. Okay? So, Article 3, Section 14, no person shall be held to answer for a criminal offense without due process of law. So, etong sa pangalawa, no person. So, it is in Article 3, Bill of Rights of Section 14, Paragraph 1. Okay, criminal law is a branch or division of law which defines crime, treats of their nature, and provides for their punishment. So, under criminal law are those considered as criminal acts. Not all crimes that are committed are in the revised penal code, of course. Kadalasan sa mga crimes sa penal code na nasa revised penal code is what you call this? Punishable by imprisonment. Majority talaga. Konti lang yung hindi imprisonment yung punishment. Okay? So, inside the revised penal code, nandun yung mga different, different crimes and yung mga elements ng isang crime, tsaka yung punishment on yung sentence on how long you are going to be in prison. At saka nandun din yung mga different circumstances. Lima, lima yan. Jemaa. Justifying, accepting, mitigating, aggravating, at saka alternative circumstances. Tsaka nandun din sa revised penal code kung ano yung scope ng ng criminal law. Kung hanggang saan. Okay? So, characteristics of criminal law. First is generality. That the criminal law is binding to all persons who live or sojourn in the Philippines, except as provided in the treaties and law of preferential application. So, dito sa generality, ang criminal law daw is applicable to anyone who lives in the Philippines. Okay? Territoriality. That the criminal law punishes crime committed within the Philippine territory with the exception of Article 2, Revised Penal Code, Book 1. So, sa territoriality, if you committed a crime within the Philippine territory, either sa air, sa water, or sa land, then covered ka ng criminal law ng Philippines. So, prospectivity, that the criminal law looks forward, it only punishes acts that are considered crime by virtue of law. So, eto na yung tulad kanina, doon sa story about sa hijacking. So, if during the commission of a certain act, hindi pa yon crime, then hindi pa yon, you cannot punish those people who committed that act in which hindi pa yon crime during the time. So, prospectivity, pa-forward siya. So, pag nagawa yung crime, tsaka pa nagiging punishable. Okay? The exception of prospectivity if it is in favor to the accused and he is not a habitual criminal. Now, ito yung isang exception. For instance, in the year 2000, naging crime yung cheating sa klase. So, there were plenty of students who were being punished. Just an example, they were being imprisoned for 10 years. Then after 5 years, sa year 2005, so either binura or sinuspend yung criminal act na yon. So, what happens is, pwede ma-apply itong prospectivity. Kasi in favor siya sa accused. So, kung sino man yung nakakommit ng crime na yon before year in between 2000 and 2005, so they can benefit dito sa sa etong characteristic sa prospectivity. Okay? So that's the only time na pwedeng i-apply pa atras. With the exception that he is not a habitual criminal, hindi niya paulit-ulit na ginawa. Okay, so 3 characteristics: generality, it is applicable to anyone living in the Philippines; territoriality, it is applicable to any crime done in the territory of the Philippines; prospectivity, pa-forward yung application ng law, ng criminal law. With the exception of prospectivity na in favor paatras sa accused. Okay? So, okay, next is crime is an act committed or omitted in violation of public law. Okay, committed yung ginawa. Omitted yung hindi mo ginawa. Of course, there are certain crimes na there are certain acts na kapag hindi mo ginawa, you are committing a crime. Gulat kayo, no? Okay, isang example nito is abandonment of a person in need or a person in injury. Let's say sa isang very secluded na place, yung lugar na halos walang tao na nakatira, naka-witness ka ng accident tapos iniwanan mo lang, hindi mo tinulungan. So, you are liable. Pwede kang makasuhan yan. Okay? So, that is an example of omission. Yung wala kang ginawa. Another example is that meron kang duty. For example, you are a police officer. So, you have the duty to arrest criminals. So, kapag nakita mo, friend ko pala yung nagnakaw. Kapag hindi mo hinuli yun, you are liable. Okay? By omission. You committed an act by omission. So first is offense. These are the different levels of a crime. So buti pa yung crime no, medyo wala. Okay, offense is an act or omission punishable by special penal laws. So, ito yung act or mga crimes under sa special penal laws. So, what are these special penal laws? So, these are laws that are not under the revised penal code as easy as that. Kasi marami ito eh. Meron din mga PDD, special decree, meron din mga RA, Act. So, all of this, yung mga letters, public act, these are special laws. Special penal laws. Penal kasi pwede kang kulong. These are the criminal acts. Next is felony. Is an act or omission punishable by the revised penal code. So these are all Felony are all criminal acts na na nasa revised penal code. So misdemeanor or infraction of laws is an act or omission in violation of city, municipality, or barangay ordinance. So kasali dito yung curfew, yung let's say yung city ordinance, meron kayong katulad dito sa Dipolog. May city ordinance number 123, bawal magtapon ng basura, jaywalking, yung ano pa ba? So, yung pag um, violation sa parking or sa traffic. Okay? So, next is, okay, malainse. Evil or inherently wrong by nature. Malum prohibitum or mala prohibita, wrong because it is prohibited. Prohibited. So in mala in se, these are crimes that are really wrong. That if you do it, ano, ano talaga siya? It is evil. Tulad ng murder, pagpatay, or homicide. So it is inherently wrong to kill a person. But dito sa malum prohibitum or mala prohibita, from the word prohibitum, prohibit, ah, nagiging wrong siya kasi ano lang, pinagbabawal lang. Let's say, dito sa, what we call this, sa pag-inom ng alak. Of course, ngayon, hindi hindi masama yung mag-inom ka ng alak. Pero as of now, na may liquor ban, of course, nagiging bawal. Kasi, ah, naging, it is being prohibited by the government in order to lessen the spread of the virus. So, that is an example of a crime that is mala prohibitum. So, it becomes a crime kasi it is prohibited. Okay, two models on how crimes are made. First is consensus model. So, members of the society gather together and decide the common norms to follow. Whoever deviates is considered a criminal. So, parang agreement. So, this is sa dati pa. So, etong dalawang models, eto yung, what do you call this? Parang another explanation on how crimes are made. First is consensus. Ito yung dati pa na yung mga tao ay mag-uusap, yung mga tao sa isang society, they're going to gather and they're going to talk about kung ano yung mga acts na considered as crime. So, kapag meron silang agreement, so, kung sino yung mga hindi mag-follow doon is considered a criminal. So, dito naman sa conflict model, derives its laws from the group holding economic, political, and social power in a community. They decide which acts are criminal. So, eto na ngayon, tulad sa atin ngayon. So, yung mga tao ang magde-decide kung ano yung mga acts na criminal or not. So, parang walang say yung kung ano yung mga tao na walang political power, social power, economic power. So, they do not have influence over different acts that will decide if it is a criminal act or not. Okay, basta yung first, consensus, is talks about the agreement, tsaka kung sino yung makagawa ng act na hindi kasali sa agreement is considered as a criminal. Sa conflict naman, only those who have power can decide kung ano yung mga acts na criminal. Okay, felonies are acts and omissions by means of dolo or culpa. Felonies by means of dolo or deceit are done by freedom, intelligence, or intent. So freedom talks about you are not being forced. Intelligence is that you have the knowledge that it is wrong. Intent is you really wanted to do it. Now, dito naman sa culpa is by fault or done by fault. Okay, freedom, hindi ka pinilit. Intelligence, of course, you know that it is wrong. So, sa imprudence or negligence, imprudence is pagdinangag. Negligence is yung pinabayaan mo na lang. Lack of foresight or skill, ito yung hindi mo masyadong na isip ng advance. Hindi ka advance mag-isip. So, example dito sa mga felonies by means of dolo or deceit is yung, let's say, pagnakaw, pagpatay, pag-rape. While dito naman sa felonies by means of culpa, let's say, reckless imprudence, yung disgrasya kasi either sa nag-overspeeding ka. So, pag dinangag yan sa imprudence or either by negligence, let's say, nasira yung gulong, pumutok yung gulong kaya nakabangga ka ng tao. So, that is negligence on your part. Walang aksidente dito. You are still liable. Kasi you have the responsibility to make or to maintain the your vehicle, the what we call this, yung condition ng yung vehicle before you are going to drive it. Okay? So, classification of crimes under the revised penal code. First is crimes against national security and the law of nations. Treason, espionage, and piracy. So, these are the certain acts, certain criminal acts that can affect the security of the nation. Next is crimes against the fundamental law of the state. Arbitrary detention, violation of domicile. So, arbitrary detention is detaining someone na lampas sa oras. Detaining by a police officer or a law enforcement agency. Violation of domicile is similar to trespassing. So, ito yung ginagawa ng mga police, trespassing ng mga police or any law enforcement group. So, you will later on know kung ano yung differences between illegal detention, arbitrary detention, violation of domicile, and trespass to dwelling. Okay, next is crimes against public order. Rebellion, sedition, kudita. Okay? So, okay, against public order. Next is crimes against public interest. Forgery, falsification, and fraud. So, naagay pangilad. So, crimes against public morals. Gambling, betting, scandals, obscenity. Vagrancy, prostitution. Pero etong vagrancy, you are considered as a vagrant kapag you are a healthy person tapos wala kang trabaho. So, dati, that is punishable, but not now. So, next is crimes committed by public officers, malfeasance, misfeasance, and nonfeasance. So, malfeasance, sa simula pa lang mali na. Misfeasance, mali yung pagkagawa mo. Sablay, kasi miss. Nonfeasance is hindi mo ginawa. So, you will also know soon the differences between these three. So, crimes against person, murder, rape, homicide, physical injuries. Crimes against properties, robbery, theft. Crimes against personal liberty and security, illegal detention, kidnapping, trespass to dwelling, threat, coercion. Crimes against chastity, concubinage, adultery, seduction, abduction, acts of lasciviousness. The crimes against civil status of persons, bigamy, crimes against honor, libel, oral defamation, quasi-offenses or criminal negligence, imprudence, and negligence. So, dito na yung mga offenses by culpa. So, justice is the process or result of using laws to fairly judge and punish crimes and criminals. So, notice I I bolded I made the word fairly bold kasi that is the main purpose of justice. Okay? To be just. Stages of criminal in the criminal justice system. Now, if a person is being suspected of committing a crime, according to the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, under the Bill of Rights, no person shall be charged of a crime without due process of law. So, dapat merong process na dadaanan yung isang suspect hanggang na maging criminal siya. So, he has to prove himself. So, his case will be heard or he will be first put into trial. So, during the time when a crime is committed, the law enforcement uh, will have certain people that are connected to the crime. So, these are persons of interest. If the investigator sees that there is a possibility that you are the one who committed the crime, so you become a suspect. Now, after that, the agency or the police will file a complaint to the prosecutor. Now, the prosecution will, what we call this, will label you from being a suspect into a respondent. So, while you are being a respondent, if the prosecutor will see that there is a probable cause that you did the crime, he will then make a paper that is called information and pass it to the court. And at this stage, you are considered as an accused. So, inakusahan ka. Giakusahan ka. Okay? So, if you are proven that you are guilty, you are then now a prisoner under the correction. Okay? So, after that, you will then be, if you have completed your sentence, or let's say naka-apply ka for probation kaya, so you will be released back into the community. And you are now an ex-convict kasi na-convicted ka. Okay, as you can see, criminal justice system in every stage, ito yung 5 pillars: law enforcement, prosecution, court, correction, community. In every stage, iba yung label mo. Okay? So, ito, victimless crime is a crime in which the victim is the perpetrator himself. So, examples are gambling, prostitution, and recreational drug use. Now, mahirap kasi ito. That is why the government is trying to avoid this victimless crimes kasi the government punishing these acts are not helping is we will not help those those victims. Okay? Let's say sa pagsusugal, yung tao is nagsusugal siya kasi let's say na addicted na siya. So if the government is going to punish those people, so ano lang din yan, maghanap din ng other ways, ganon. Pagdating din sa kulungan, magsusugal din yan. And in the case naman sa prostitution, if you're going to arrest these prostitutes na nag-resort na sa prostitution kasi sa sobrang hirap ng buhay, well, parang parang ano, parang you're trying to pull them down even more. So that is why may mga steps yung government na to minimize the arrests of victimless crimes para maging para ma-prevent yung mga tao na mag-resort sa ganitong mga crimes. Now, the criminal justice system is a tool used by the society to maintain justice and have equal protection from the law by having equal rights of the law. So, it is a system for those who are being labeled as criminal. So, flow ito. So, as you can see dito, ito yung mga stages. Okay? First is the law enforcement pillar. It is considered as the prime mover of the system. Most vital since failure to carry out the function properly may cause the dismissal of the case. Now, prime mover of the system. Kapag merong crime nang yayari, so, eto kasi sila yung unang nagre-respond. If walang magpa-file ng kaso, they can file. So, dito nagsisimula. Usually. Okay? So, their function is also very important. Kasi according to this, failure to carry out the function properly may cause the dismissal of the case. So, bakit? Kasi dito, nagdedepende yung pag-collect ng evidence, yung proper collection of evidence. If mali yung pagka-collect ng evidence mo, your evidence, the evidence that will be presented in court if wrongly collected or acquired will be void, hindi tatanggapin. And that is under the doctrine of the poisonous tree. That if an evidence that is wrongly collected, ano ba to? Is wrong itself. So, kung poison yung tree, then poison din yung fruit. Okay? So, that doctrine is made in order to avoid planting of evidences. Okay? So, may connection din ito sa chain of custody. So, you will later on find out kung ano yung mga terms yung ibinanggit ko. Next pillar is the prosecution pillar, composed of public prosecutors. They evaluate the evidence and decide whether it is sufficient to warrant the filing of charges. So, before ka mag-file ng case sa court, dadaan pa ito sa prosecution. Mostly. Kasi meron din namang mga crimes na pwedeng diretso sa court. But most, dadaan talaga ng prosecution. Na complaint, ito yung sinabi ko kanina, na sa complaint, yung isang suspect ay magiging respondent. It is a sworn written statement charging a person with an offense subscribed by the offended party and filed to any peace officer or public officer in charge with the enforcement of the law. So, ito yung ibibigay sa prosecution. Next is preliminary investigation. Is an inquiry or proceeding for the purpose of determining whether there is sufficient ground to engender a well-founded belief that a crime cognizable by the regional trial court has been committed and that the respondent is probably guilty thereof and should be held for trial. So this is the stage, this is the process in which um, there is a analysis by the prosecutor based on the evidences presented to him kung meron bang krimen talaga na nangyari. At saka yung respondent is possible na yung gumawa. Okay? So kung meron, then that is the probable cause. A well-founded belief that a crime has been committed and the respondent is probably guilty thereof and should be held for trial, then he will file an information to the court and is an accusation in writing charging a person with an offense subscribed by the fiscal and filed with the court. Okay? The court, third pillar under the judiciary branch, composed of all trial courts from MTC to the highest court or the Supreme Court. It is where a case will be heard and tried. It is where decisions of the case are made and the disposition of the convicted. Guilty beyond reasonable doubt is the proof needed in a criminal case. Now remember that, beyond reasonable doubt. So, dapat walay pang duha-duha. Kanang um, wala gyoy doubt. Walay pagduda nga siya bang gahimo or dili siya ang gahimo. Kasi if there is doubt, of course, it will be in the favor of the accused. Acquitted yan. So, dapat may mga proof talaga that will really prove that the accused committed the crime. Okay? So, arrest is a taking of person in custody in order that he may be bound to answer for the commission of an offense. So, this is signed by a judge. Arrest is an act. Now, warrant of arrest, a written order issued and signed by a magistrate or judge directed to a peace officer or some other person specially named and commanding him to arrest the body of a person named in it who is accused of an offense. So, this is signed by a judge. Ordering a peace officer to present that person na nasa warrant of arrest in court. Okay? Search warrant, an order in writing issued in the name of the people of the Philippines, signed by a judge and directed to a peace officer, commanding him to search for personal properties describing therein and bring it therefore the court. So, warrant of arrest is the person, search warrant is for the things. The correction. Okay. Dito naman sa court pillar, dito nangyayari kung guilty ba ang isang tao o hindi. Okay? So, medyo importante talaga yung role ng korte kasi mahirap naman kung we can uh, we can imprison an innocent person. That is why nandun yung prosecution para screening na din. Parang screening na din in order to lessen the chance of imprisoning an innocent person. So, para pagdating sa court, medyo lesser na yung mga number of cases filed sa kanya kasi parang na-review na rin ng prosecution. So, um, na malelesen din yung chance yung na magkaroon ng ah, wrong decision ng court. Okay? Then next is correction, the fourth pillar. Caters convicted felons responsible for the safekeeping and reformation of criminals. The correction also assures that upon the release of the inmate, he is already reforged and ready to be integrated in the community. Okay, we already discussed about it. The community is the last pillar. It is responsible for the reintegration of the ex-convict into the society. So, I think this is the last topic. So, mostly na-cover na yung mga topics na needed for you to finish this subject and so that para hindi na kayo magugulat sa mga future subjects nyo. So, I hope you are properly introduced with the subjects, and if meron kayong mga questions talaga, I will gladly answer it. Okay, so I think that's it. Congratulations for finishing this subject, and good luck to the final examinations. Bye bye.